Nebraska's toughest scheduled game is here, Ohio State. Before the season, there was a lot of speculation that Nebraska would be going into this game 7-0, and there was a general acceptance that they would lose to Ohio State. I think 5-2 is acceptable, Gary, but the question is this a winnable game at all? Both of us here on the channel are big fans of Will Compton and Taylor Lewan on Bussin'. Love when they have Rule on. Honestly, love when they have anyone on. Recently, Gary, your boy Will, made this claim.
I'm telling you, we are not dead. We are not dead. Fucking put the cheese out, set the traps. We can go into Ohio State. We can win this game. We can win that. Like, I say that because I know everybody else is going to laugh at it, but I swear to God, that score was not, we are not on life support. We are not on life support.
No one's laughing at that.
In your eyes, Gary, is this game anywhere near the ballpark of winnable?
Absolutely not. Like, outside of a Michigan Appalachian State from however many years ago type of crazy scenario, which they basically won with special teams, keep in mind, no. And back to what you said of 5-2 being acceptable and a good record and things like that, I agree. And I think most of the fan base last year going into this year would agree. But the problem is expectations change from week to week. So when things started out, Raiola looked like he looked, regardless of who the teams we were playing, regardless of how much a team like Colorado has progressed from that point in the season to now. Like you said, a lot of people projected or thought there's a good chance we'd be 7-0 going into Ohio State. I don't think we were one of them. I don't remember exactly where you were at. I thought we'd at least have one loss. But as things go, when you're 5-2 with a lot of expectations of 7-0 or 7-1 before you play the game that everybody had already predicted we're going to lose, that's where I think you're starting to see a lot of the honeymoon stage and the kind of blind faith and trust that was predominantly in Rule, but in some of the coordinators and stuff like that still lasted. People who hadn't already jumped off of like the Satterfield wagon, for example. That's where you see that starting to wane. And then to lose the way they did. You know, it wasn't a close loss or the game was never out of reach, but the score is respectable type game against Indiana. But back to your question, the reason I say absolutely not, Indiana looked like Ohio State playing us. So they're not Ohio State, right? And now we're going to see a varsity version of Indiana. And I don't think the score is going to be as bad, but I think that has to do more with Ohio State than us. I'm really going into this game looking to see glaring problems fixed. Like I told you last week, man, I gave up on the special teams. It is what it is as far as I'm concerned. I don't care about that in this game. I want to see a defense that doesn't struggle with tackling at any point. There's going to be missed and broken tackles throughout any game, but to the level we've seen it, whether it be for quarters or halves or an entire game like last week, gap assignments on defense, on the defensive line, perimeter blocking on offense, guys being able to run somewhat open. From a coaching perspective, I would like to see, I've been clamoring for a while of a Harburg package where he stays out there for a drive or two. And he's an actual threat to run and throw, not just a decoy or not taking the snap, knowing it's basically a wildcat and he's going to run. If Raiola is not allowed to or not going to run, I think it's too late in the season to start having him taking snaps from under center. You need to go to a quick pass game. These plays take so long to develop. He's not comfortable under pressure. Teams are sending pressure now because they see it. And we don't have guys that are getting open even when you give them 5 seconds, 7 seconds to get out there. So I would like to see, guys like Alex Bullock back in because he can perimeter block better than a lot of these guys. You can go with a Harburg as a H-back type, do almost like a 12 personnel, like him and Fedoni end up being tight ends. He can go in motion and be in the backfield, or he can come motion out of the backfield and be a threat on the edge or mix it up like that. Attack, rotate Barney and Lloyd and get some stretches down the field to keep the safeties over the top. But teams have learned, especially these teams that are more athletic than us, they can just play man-to-man and they can run blitz and put pressure on Raiola the whole game, and there's nothing we can do about it.
And in Ohio State's case, they won't even have to probably blitz. They're really good at getting home with just 4 and having everyone in coverage.
No, you're exactly right. And it's this emphasis on we need to run the ball, and we can talk about Satterfield's comments about running. For whatever reason, you can't. And I say whatever reason, not like it's not obvious, but there's multiple reasons, right? And it's like, well, the best friend for a young quarterback is a running game. You don't have a breakaway running back. Emmett, sometimes Ramir can make a guy miss, but they're not consistent at doing it. The idea of leaving these guys in pass pro and giving Raiola more time to pass when you have receivers that aren't getting open, and the line, I think, has been improved, but over the course of a game is breaking down. Run those guys out in wheel routes or go through the A or B gap once it opens and turn around. I mean, if you're going to settle with 2 and 3 yard checkdowns for the majority of your passing game, let it be to a running back after the blitz has come, right? And get these quick passes out early, establish some rhythm, make the defense start playing tighter. Then you can use Nair, Barney Lloyd, double moves with Banks, things like that down the field. I don't mean to ramble on with all these different ideas. I want to see the coaches make adjustments and put the effort into. They're a better team across the board, right? They're better coached. They've been together longer. They have more talent on the team. There's no reason. And like you said, both big fans of Compton and the boys and whatnot. But the expectations, I felt like along the way through this season, were overinflated. Were higher than what I think was realistic. I think if the expectations people had would have been met, for me, it would have been a huge surprise in a good way. But when you look a certain way at certain points of games and you beat teams that aren't good, the Nebraska fan base is usually pretty optimistic before games or before seasons, and then they kind of go drastic the other way when things don't go that way. Even floating out there that there's a possibility they win, especially coming off of that performance, I think is just not good for the state that the program's in, the fan base is in now, where, I mean, we had people in the live stream last week talking about Rule being fired, let alone Satterfield and Foley and McGuire and things like that. The reality, when you step back and look at the grand scheme of things, is they're 5-2. This is the tough part of the schedule. I don't think this game's winnable, especially after watching Indiana, but I really don't think that the last 4 games aren't winnable. You could lose them, you could win them, whatever, but they're on the table. So I think you take this game knowing you're going to take a loss, expecting that, but not letting that be the issue. Don't go in tense and tight. We got to win this game or whatever, because I think you're going to compile on top of the stress that's already on the program. Go play loose and free. Everybody do their job, like Rule keeps trying to stress, and have some positive things to take away from the game film going into these next 4 winnable games to finish out your season.
Normally, I'm also a very optimistic fan like Will, so I understand his plight. And to play devil's advocate, or in this case, God's advocate, as to why the Huskers could win, Matt Rule talked about he knew that when we went to play Purdue, they were not going to give up the rushing yards that they were giving up in games prior. It was their last straw. They were going to sell out to stop it. They were going to make changes, and they did. And they stopped our run for the most part. I think we're in that situation. We got our tails whipped. And I think we're going to make drastic changes. But more so than that, on top of that, we could very well see the Huskers' intensity go back to what it was for Colorado, back to what it was for those other games where they broke through the line and got to the quarterback. They didn't have that last week, and they did not have that against Illinois. I don't think it's likely to happen versus Ohio State. Those are just the things that I could see making this game close or in the ballpark to winnable. And if it's anywhere near winnable, it's kind of a win, let's be honest. Score-wise, I'm going to go 48-20. And I hate to say that, but like, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's too late in the season to be making drastic changes or seeing big differences. I think everything that you want to do new or different has to be very minimal. But I think the big changes that we need to see is consistent, sound football. I had the whole rant last week about how at some point players have to execute. Every time we have a bad season, we want to get a new coach. And it's rare that you see guys for an extended period of time throughout a season just really executing what they're supposed to be doing. I am optimistic that you'll see that in a lot of areas. I just don't think it's going to be enough, man. I think it's a little bit more respectable than last week. I don't think Ohio State's going to go all out coming off of a loss to Oregon and having Penn State next week. So I think there'll be more of a time of possession, domination, still score fairly easy. I think we'll have a lot of trouble scoring. I'm kind of up there with you, man. I'm thinking like maybe 17 or so for Nebraska, maybe a late garbage touchdown. I think they try to kick some field goals. He alluded to he wishes he would have on one of those drives last week. So I'll go 17 Nebraska, 42 Ohio State in a modest drubbing. Like if they wanted to crank it up, I think they could. And I think you might see it either early on, or if they start off sluggish, I think you might see them dump it on a little bit. But then I think they just kind of go taking the air out of the ball and dominate time of possession on us.
Tell us what your score prediction for the game is. Can't wait to see you guys for the live stream Saturday. Until then, go Big Red.